In this episode, there will be many end time prophecy updates and live updates from the end time, including important additional tips for practical preparation in terms of financial advice and long-term food storage, the London Raven prophecy, and hints from the pigs themselves, additions to the timeline chart, a shocking example of how so-called Christianity is used to spread the doctrines of the devil, and much more. So the Tiberius system is collecting data, the tense is wrong here, from federal agencies, government, pharmaceutical firms, to enable the officials to integrate a wide range of demographic employment and public health data to identify the folks they need. So in the Gospel of Luke, it was Tiberius who was reigning at the time when Jesus was sentenced to death. So the Tiberius software was developed particularly for Operation Warp Seed, the dictionary definition of warp, to bend or turn from the natural or true direction or course. Another definition of warp: to be or become biased, hold, or a change in opinion due to prejudice, external influence, or something of that sort. And second, it seems I'm a bit late in forwarding you the invitation, but in New Mexico you were invited to safely sit on Saturn's lap. That's their actual advertising, and then you get a picture with him and you make a $7 donation for a good cause. And then the very same people say, God bless America. I'm really not sure which God they mean. So Karl is the chief of the German Social Democratic Gang, and he proposes bug-style lockdowns for climate change. Luckily, we have a couple of healthy people around still like Joe. Since we have gladly given up our freedoms, lockdowns will now be routine. And the most disturbing of the entire situation is the status of this gang. This is one of the sister parties of the largest by members and parliament seats union. In other words, the main gang. And next, actually, we may get information about the future development of the events from the theater directors who have been kind to publish them for us. This is a public document on their official website, the World Bank. So this document describes in detail the current bug theater, strategic preparedness and response problem. So it must be a typo, program. So the important is that this is a multi-phase project, which was well known before even the bug problem started, because actually this is a set of documents, hundreds of pages of detailed program for the preparedness and response problem for each and every country, tailored for its infrastructure. All this requires lots of work and integration between many bureaucratic departments, because these are the practical exact steps for each and every country. These are not just general guidelines and then they tell the countries apply them for yourself the way you find appropriate. No, and they already have the exact steps everybody has to make. And to prepare all this you need minimum many months, so they must have started at latest in 2019. And interestingly enough, in the very same paper, they tell us that on March 3rd this last year, the board of executive directors endorsed the urgent action in response to the panic. And that was a week earlier, before the official international panic was declared. Not only according to the newspapers, but according to the text of this very same document as well. Here, this is a piece of the same document confirming that on March 11, the World Health Organization declared a global panic, while more than a week before that, all the thousands of pages of documents were ready and everything was already in action. And when I say in action, I mean really big time. They couldn't even wait a few more days to go through the bureaucratic procedures. Even before putting the official stamps, they were already making transfers worth millions to the local government for eligible expenditures on implementing their plan. Sadly, the other plan, which seems to be the main highlight on their website, eliminating world poverty, that hasn't received any attention since the creation of the bank, probably. So the main point I'm making is that the theater directors knew very well in advance. I'm sure they have been to a good tarot reader, because there is no other way to find about these things in advance without a tarot reader, right? And the way we can benefit from this publication is that they have even given the exact timing when phase 1 of their multi-phase theater will end. Here, clearly they are telling us when does the first phase end. Until 2025. And interestingly enough, this summer when I was making the first episodes of this series, when I put all the prophecies together, my conclusion was also that the proper biblical tribulation will start somewhere around 2025. This is in the first couple of episodes. Just to remind you, something short from those episodes is that Alexander Paramonov told us about this plan, that this phase now, not about the book, but about also the general situation, which will be escalating exponentially from now on. He also mentioned 2025 as a threshold. He meant it more as the time they're planning to absolutely demolish the finance system and establish the new one. But that more or less coincides with the beginning of the biblical tribulation. And also he said that is the plan, but they may do it a bit earlier as well. Not everything is set in stone. And in terms of the a little bit earlier remark, one of the swine officials mentioned accidentally that they were expecting way more resistance from the people. In the document under question, there are also hints about this. They definitely talk about the armies enforcing these policies. But most of the people were much more cooperative than they expected. So here it is. We may complete the plan even before 2025. So in the Tower of London, in London, the heart of the English monarchy, they have this legend that the monarchy will hold only until the resident ravens do not take off and do not leave the tower. These ravens are considered the guardians of the monarchy. What a funny coincidence, because the raven is symbolically connected to ill fortune and deceit. Well, maybe that's why they care more for the resident ravens than the residents of UK. They have their special aviary and everything. Well, sadly, they clip their wings off so that they cannot fly away. Well, let's see. This policy of cutting off people's wings works successfully on the general population of England. Let's see if will it prevent the ravens from flying away at the right time. If you live in London, please keep me updated if you hear anything about this. So a viewer actually sent me very important additional information about the parallels between Kalki and Christ. He probably managed to identify the Antichrist in the Kalki story. That would be the demon Kali. Kali should not be confused with the goddess Kali. The word Kali simply means black in Hindi. So the goddess Kali, who has black skin, is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord Bhagavan, while the demon Kali, he is from hell. He is not godly. So both have the same name but should not be confused. So the interesting thing is that in the story of Kalki, at the very end, Kalki or Christ wins victory over his main opponent, and that is the demon Kali. And the way Kali tries to evade him at the very last moment before he is slain is by evaporating just to re-emerge again in the end of the next Kali Yuga and trouble the people again. And this is a very interesting parallel with the Muslim variation of the biography of the Antichrist, who at the end, at Armageddon, he tries to evaporate and escape Christ. Unsuccessfully, maybe because this is the last Kali Yuga anyway, and his services won't be required further, according to some sources. So I managed to get a physical copy of the book with the Prophecies of Gottfried von Vanderberg. That's the first book, by the way. It came out of print in 1994. Basically, you heard the gist of the prophecies in the episode about World War III. But at that time I didn't have the full text, and now that I have it, I see that there are a few more things worth mentioning. In terms of finances, he does not recommend any long-term savings accounts or insurances, so all of that will be obviously relevant. And he makes a very relevant point about the time of inflation. He says, let's not forget what usually happens in such scenarios. The savings of the people are destroyed, and they make everything possible to save the banks. And as a result, many people who have mortgages or any type of debt, they won't be able to make their payments anymore because of the inflation, the crazy time, redundant jobs, useless salaries which cannot buy you anything. So he says that during this transitory period of the revolutions, when the inflation will be increasing steadily, it won't be like, according to him, a sudden crash, but a steady increase over, I don't know, months or years. So during that time, people who have mortgage on their house, they won't be able to pay it, and basically the banks will take possession of a whole lot of houses, so many that it will be impossible to expel all those people from their houses. So what they will most likely do is they will make them tenants. They will possess your house, make you their tenant, and then the burden of the rent will be even more unbearable, of course. That's why he recommends to keep your money only in a very liquid state, so that you can access them at any time very quickly to buy tangible things and provisions, which will be the only thing which matters once we enter the proper tribulation, which seems to be still a couple of years ahead, according to his prophecies as well, because we have not seen yet the war in the Middle East, nor widespread warfare in Africa, which he also predicts, nor the sign in the skies, planetary parade or whatever they call it, which will be the big sign for the big war, nor the destruction of New York, which he also describes before the war. This will be like a proof for his prophecies if it happens as he foretold it. Now, it is very interesting what he says about the timing of the war, and that was written in 1994. He says the war will happen sometime around 1998. And then he adds later on that there is also a slight chance of another timeline and the war will come actually much later. He says the chances of that development are very slight, but still I have to mention them. So probably this is exactly what happened, and this is the most likely explanation for that entire group of prophecies which talk about many years, like 25 or something like that, between the pre-tribulation and the tribulation. And the other very similar type of prophecies to which those of Gottfried belong is that they don't even describe the Great Tribulation, they only describe the pre-tribulation. So most likely at this time we took the second most likely scenario, and that is to have the two tribulations together instead of having a span of a couple of decades between them. So just to wind up with his recommendation on finances, he says that some people, due to tax considerations, they have debts and profits at the same time, and they don't. They make such tricks to pay less taxes that they have to stay in debt and pay it off gradually, although they have lots of profits which effectively they don't want to declare. So he warns that in this situation, their profits will be destroyed when the inflation starts, but they will be still liable for their debts. And they may also get in trouble. So he advises that even though currently, for tax considerations, it may look as if it is disadvantageous to pay off all debts, in long term, that could be a better policy. Now, next, he gives lots of importance on building secret shelters and hiding places, because he, as many others, says that the worst in terms of wars and invasions and revolutions will start so suddenly that you may not have time or materials to build then these hiding places for you or your food. And with the food, he explains how vital are the hiding places, because in most countries what will happen is the sides of the wars and revolutions will reverse very rapidly, and some army will come or some gang, and your house will be searched on a regular basis. They will just take all the food they can find, and this may happen very suddenly. So if you don't have like double walls or whatever other things you devise, you may end up losing the most precious thing, which is your food provisions. So he very much stresses on having a couple of such hiding places in case some of them get discovered or exposed when earthquakes strike. And of course, he gives top priority to moving to a safe area in the countryside. He gives map only for the German-speaking regions. For all other regions, of course, he says to avoid all cities, highways, major railways, or areas in proximity to military bases. He also stresses the importance of relocating to your safe place before the sudden big storm starts, because first of all, the roads could be closed. Second of all, even if you arrive there, your place might be occupied by strangers from some city who did not have hut of their own. In addition, he warns that if one lands in a hiding place in emergency, even though one may have some provisions and reasonable amount of durable goods, still when one hasn't lived there properly, it is sure that sooner or later he will find out, oh, I need this or that small thing, and without this or that small thing, the entire life becomes very difficult. And not all small things can be foreseen as necessary in advance. He also saw in his visions that there will be a type of people who, when the storm starts, on immediate notice, they will simply fly off to faraway places, which, according to current perception, may look kind of safe, like Australia or New Zealand, because these type of countries usually tend to stay away from military action. But he warns that there will be no difference over there. It will be the same. And these people who fled in hurry would have been much better off if they would have invested their money and energy in securing something in the remote mountains of their own country. Now, a few additional notes on long-term food storage, additional to what has been already said in the episode about preparations. You have to calculate that you will need food for 7 years. And if you put on the menu almost every day soup of rice and some lentils and beans inside, you will be surprised how little rice and lentils you will need, just a couple of kilos per month. And it's good to have some oil to it, of course. Oils are not very durable. At best, their shelf life is 2 years. However, shelf life is actually best before. And in the case of oils, they are actually eatable twice their shelf life. Well, the flavor will be less, but of course, if the prophecies come true and you still have oil at that time, it will taste even expired much better to you than it tasted before expiration. And then in this video, I have yet another list of panaceas suitable for the end times, out of which the turmeric and many other spices and shilajit stand out. Turmeric has countless benefits like purifying blood, antibacterial, antiseptic, etc. I forgot to mention in that video that it also can be put directly on wounds. It provides kind of disinfection. It's a tribal remedy, or so to say, means to dress wounds on the go. So I would recommend adding turmeric and shilajit to your end times provisions list. Now, there are plenty of offers that you buy survival food with even 10 or 20 years expiration date. And it all seems very attractive, but when I took a close look, I noticed a few questionable moments about it. Before I even start with those, if you need really a 7 years supply of that, it will cost tens of thousands. For a family, hundreds of thousands. So the first question which came to mind is, how come they have all these dishes with eggs and meats and lots of oil and cheese, but all these things that I listed, they are not at all durable? What kind of chemicals do they have in there to make them stay good for 20 years, or are they really good? Some of them even advertise that our food is made from 100% organic vegetables and ingredients. Really? And the heavy preservatives are also organic? Here in Europe, this type of foods are more popular compared to America, I guess. But the bottom line is that this is just wheat and sugar. Certainly there is no harm of having a couple of packages of this as well. But if you just have real wheat and sugar, that will cost about 20 times less. It will not have the loads of preservatives and can be used in many other ways, like, for example, to make sprouts from the wheat or even to grow plants. I would recommend in general foods like chia because it multiplies its volume many times when prepared. Also, you can grow plants from it and you can even grow sprouts from it. And one last point about these survival meals packages. Basically, they're powdered, just add hot water. Many of them are non-vegetarian, and according to the Nina prophecies, the people who eat meat will have additional problems during the tribulation when they crank up their black magic and activate all the particles or whatever contaminations they have been implanting in the people in all kinds of forms, including the food. Those who eat meat will be more affected because the fruits and vegetables are also polluted, but they're not really our close relative species, while the animals, especially the mammals whose meat some people consume, the genetic modifications, they're accepted as something owned by our body and is adopted by it. So this lady Nina, she herself is a Christian. She doesn't consider eating meat to be a sin, but she has become vegetarian after allegedly seeing what awaits the non-vegetarians. It's severe nausea and many other symptoms. That's how she describes it. And Pramonov also, he just said that he highly recommends becoming vegetarian. He did not say it is sin to eat meat, but he simply does not recommend it for other reasons. According to Ayurveda, meat is not harmful, it is only consciousness lowering. And according to the set material of Jane Roberts, he doesn't really preach being vegetarian actually, but on the other hand, he does admit that it is better to be vegetarian. So as I'm trying to find Polish tea and French chart, I added a few things, mainly after going again through the material from the Nina Prophecies. So I added the so-called aliens, which will be something like, I don't know, black magic or holograms or some sort of deep fake blend technology. So this is at least the third prophecy, if not the fourth, which describes them that they are actually evil spirits and they will indeed heal the sicknesses with which they have infected the people before that in exchange for their soul. So this I had before from reliable sources, because the Nina prophecies are not, for me at least, yet officially verified prophecies, but I didn't know where to put that on the chart. So instead of putting it random, I took at least the timing from her, and that's during the pre-tribulation. And then I added the man-eating dinosaurs in the Great Tribulation. Again, they are there in the Vyacheslav prophecies, which at this point I consider verified. I just didn't know where to put them on the chart, and she said that it will be at the time when all the waters on earth turn blood red. And then again, based on Nina, I have shifted a little bit the timing of the World War III. Somewhere in the first half or the middle of the pre-tribulation instead of the very beginning of the pre-tribulation. Because I figured out that the other prophets who always put it in the beginning of the pre-tribulation, it's because for their local area, that's when the exact worst starts. But it is not so necessarily in a planetary scale. And Nina explained very well that first of all, the natural disasters will hit worse in the west, and only somewhat later they will also come to the eastern hemisphere. And then shortly after that, the big war will start as a mere culmination of the various civil wars, which will hit almost all countries on earth. And by the way, now I make the connection that she and Gottfried von Werdenberg actually say that this big war will start involving many countries first in Africa. But since the wars in Africa are always underreported or not at all reported at all, and that's why for the people in the civilized world it will be indeed as the prophets describe it, because they see what the way people see it on the ground at that time is that it will start first in the Balkans, and before that they will be stirring in the Middle East, because these are the areas which are above the radar in terms of news coverage. And Africa, nobody seems to care. It's extremely puzzling to me that the type of civil disturbances like Black Lives Matter, they have energy to devastate black neighborhoods in America, but they don't have time to spare to turn the attention of the public to the problems in Africa. And then I also added the sinking of Japan. There are many prophecies about that. It seems to be something which most likely is in the cards. I just didn't know where to place it. And again, from Nina, she says that it will be in the pre-tribulation. And then this major asteroid impact, which as she mentions, hitting America if certain conditions are met, that also, she says, will be midway during the big war, which more or less means again somewhere mid pre-tribulation. So I hope you find this chart helpful. I have not seen anything that comprehensive in any other source. If you have somewhere to publish it in your own language, commercially or not, it is free, you can do so, and also we can make together a translation. If you wish to help me with translation to your language, first of all, check the description of this video in case already somebody else has submitted the translation for the same language. If you don't see it listed, it means you can simply write in plain text all the items one after another and send it to me by email. Should be found in the description of this video. And then I will make a colorful version in your own language, which you can distribute anywhere you wish for free, as long as my credit logo remains. So something else from the book of the Austrian seer, that's how it is called, a seer from Austria, breaks his silence. He says that because he prophesies for the German-speaking territories only, he says that nuclear weapons will be used during the Great War, especially in Germany and Czechia. However, contrary to the myths spread by the mass media, he sees very, very healthy people after the nuclear war. Nature recovered very quickly and there were no noticeable long-term radiation problems. On the other hand, he does mention specifically the areas where nuclear weapons will be used because the people in those areas will need to stay in shelters for a long time. He says for weeks in a row. There is a link in the description about the myths spread by the mass media about the nuclear weapons and the truth. Well, it's not so difficult to figure out that people will be very healthy in those future times, even without being a prophet. It's so simple. There will be no hospitals like now, so of course people will be healthy. It's exactly what I observe with cats. The cats in the wild, they're basically healthy. And those who are what people call proper pet health care, they're sick much more often. So I did a test. I thought, let's see what will YouTube show me as first results when I do search, and this is what came up. 500,000 subscribers, the video seems to be very highly rated, and a young smiling chap assures us that we should take enthusiastically part in all government initiatives of fixation, etc. Because, you see, he says, the righteous Christians, he pretends to be Christian, they will be raptured according to the Bible even before the mark of the donkey is implemented. So the true Christians, like himself, he said, we don't need to even think about these things. So I will be listing his cons so that you don't fall victim of such antichrist preachers pretending to be Christian ministers. Actually, the rapture is mentioned in the Bible, but there is no specific timing pinpointed during the tribulation. So some people believe it will be in the beginning, in the middle, or in the end. Some even believe there will be 2 or more raptures. It's okay to believe in anything, but it is ridiculously preposterous to say that all the godly people will depart with the rapture, because if one follows even the most basic Bible narrative, there are definitely godly people during the time of Antichrist. They are persecuted by him. They refuse the mark. So either there are multiple raptures, or the rapture is after the mark of the donkey, or the rapture doesn't take all the good people. So the first argument was a total con. And the second one, even more obvious. He says that the mark will be a conscious choice and not a trickery. Really? I mean, is he talking to people who have never, who don't have a chance to open the Bible? I mean, even without opening the Bible, everybody knows that the devil, he is the guru of all liars and trickers, and his main weaponry is deceit. And he will exactly trick the people into believing that he is Christ, and that's how he will make them take his mark. So the con in this argument is to say that because the choice is conscious, it is done without trickery. No, you can consciously fall victim of deceit, like this guy who makes the video did. And I was like suspicious. The video is highly rated. Then I looked at the commentaries. They are all negative. People are asking him if he works for the Gates Club, because it is very difficult to believe that a person who has read even part of the Bible would think of such things. And then the chap continues that the current fixation campaigns cannot have any relation with the mark of the donkey, because that in the Bible is about buying and selling. So these are completely different things, he says, really. And then with the certificate here, without the certificate, they are already talking about refusing you public services. How far is it that they will refuse you even banking services? Not at all far. This is, of course, so ridiculous, but the disturbing thing is that most people are superficial listeners nowadays, and they will fall for such shallow talk. The chap even continued further. He says, according to the Bible, the mark will be a physical tattoo or something on the forehead or on the head, and the fixation has no physical mark at all. And that's true, actually, because the fixation is not the proper mark. However, he's just not giving you the correct quote from the Bible, where it says that the false prophet, he will set up the system for marking even before the arrival of the main Antichrist. The young chap from the video even argues that it is nonsense to talk of any mark of the donkey at this point anyway, since the temple in Jerusalem, where the coronation of the Antichrist will take place, is not even built, and the mark of the donkey will be during the time of the Dajjal, which is after the coronation. Now that's true, but again, he is giving the wrong quote. The correct quote from the Bible is the verse where the false prophet introduces the system, the technical system and the biological system in the people for eventually accepting the mark. Because I can see that they're taking no chances, they're planning it very carefully, and it's not gonna be that they will put it on the table as a choice, the way most people understand it. Only the intelligent will even see the option of the choice. Most of the people will have the feeling that they have no choice because their biological body is barely functioning and they are heavily depressed at that time. Their willpower will be almost non-existent. I wonder why. Was it because of the preparations? And then the other type of extreme pressure will be the lack of good food for those who refuse the mark, and also they will be separated from their families. It will be very, very common in those days. The wife takes the marks, the husband doesn't, or vice versa, or brothers and sisters. And when I say separated, it doesn't necessarily mean physically. Even if they remain together and live together, still during the tribulation, the gap between their realities will be widening so rapidly that it will be very, very obvious.